Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now. A bit of a side project I'm running over here on this channel where I go back to games of yesteryear that aren't strictly contemporary, but I think they deserve a bit more of a shout out. I line it up with a sale where possible. A little bit different today because we have this event, Warhammer Skulls, an annual Warhammer celebration. I don't know if it goes beyond video games. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not as tapped into Warhammer as I used to be. I used to love tournaments and all that sort of stuff, but it may well be just a video game Warhammer festival since that whole genre has exploded over time. But regardless, that's what brings us to Gladius today, because this game is currently, at the time of this video, and I'm going to rush it out onto the channel, so if you're watching this relatively close to release, Gladius is free to keep. You can go onto Steam and claim it and keep it forever, and you should because it's an absolute banger of a game. The full title, Warhammer 40,000 Gladius TAC Relics of War, right? It's a bit of a mouthful. Gladius, I suppose, is the shorthand. I'm a really big fan of this game. It's grown on me over the years. Slytherin's the publisher. Proxy Studios is the dev. Now, they've since, I don't know if you'd say split, because they're still putting out DLC. In fact, I only just realized at the end of my time today, getting B-roll and dipping back in, that there's a new DLC called, I think, Onslaught, that's released today as well. So they're still doing something, but Proxy went ahead and self-published Zephon, which you should also check out. If you pick this up and you like this, then you might like Zephon. We just covered a DLC release on that on the main channel, and it's very close to this game. However, it's using their own custom world setting. I don't want to get derailed and turn this into a Zephon video, but I just thought I'd, tie all the pieces together for you because you might have no idea what's going on. Again, this is a bit of a trip down memory lane, bit of nostalgia. I actually dipped in and did 3 starts in my time with this game this morning just to get a bit of different footage from the different factions, but also gives me an opportunity to talk about how different they are. They all play very radically different. It's one of those sort of games. But broadly speaking, the idea is that it is a top-down strategy. I mean, 4X is such a broad term these days. Who even knows what that means anymore? But if you're seeing comparisons at a glance to something like the Civ series, then yeah, you'd be right. And the joke that I've used over the years is the elevator pitch would be, what if you took the combat of Civ and you pretty much made an entire game that was combat-centric, right? Which I still stand by that being a terrible elevator pitch. The worst part of the Civ games is in fact the combat. However, somehow they made it work here. So this game is pretty much non-stop unit production, throughput, and all of the things like the research trees and the logistics, supply chains, resource management. All of it is just to prop up your war machine and to just outfight the other teams. It works really well. It's quite punchy and fast. It is interesting because I'm spoiled. I've been playing a lot of Zephon recently. There's a few quality of life things that were added into that, like speeding up enemies' turns, etc. But the DNA is still here. And this game is very robust because they have added so many different factions and teams. There's a lot in the base game already. I think there might be 4. It's been so long, but there's got to be like 10 or a dozen factions all said with the little DLCs. It's not that expensive as part of this sale to pick that stuff up, but you don't need it. You'll be fine with the base factions until you worn yourself out on them. And then there's all like unit packs. They'll add these DLCs that'll add a couple of units and buildings to different factions. And there's a lot of content here, and it goes on sale fairly often. So don't feel too pressured to pick up all the DLC. Anyway, the moment to moment is just that. You're pretty much building military units coming out of a starter base, though every team is different. Some of them are a bit more settlement based, some of them are a bit more one base only. So they all have their own racial rule set, as it were. But for the most part, the rhythm is build more units. Just keep churning them out. You've got very readable UI elements that will tell you if you're in the black or if you're in the red, and then you just try and shore up around there. You move around the map. It's all set on this planet, Gladius, the titular Gladius, which gives them a good little excuse to come up with some interesting xeno species. So you come against all sorts of neutral enemies, and for your first half of a playthrough, the neutrals are going to be your real antagonistic force. The late game, it becomes, you know, factional fights against the other players or the other AI or whatever. But in the beginning, the neutrals, the grey AI units, are no slouch. In fact, like I said, I did a couple of quick starts with different factions and I almost got tabled because I just overextended, for example, like with my orcs. But yeah, they have a whole bunch of different units. They're really interesting Xeno stuff. You can kind of see that Zephon influence coming through there. Like these giant bloody scorpion creatures, and then there's these ones that will mind possess your dudes and run off with them to the other side of the map, and that's a bit frustrating. And they are relentless. They will hunt down your dudes and last hit them, and so you have to be really strategic and think about it. But at your core economy, you're essentially buying tiles to add onto your territory or onto your main city. Let's just talk broad. And within those tiles, there'll be build spaces, usually about 2 or 3, but you can clear forests, things like that, to make it more viable. And on those tiles, they don't necessarily give you resources per se, but they will generally, depending on the type, something like Civ, right? Plains, forests, whatever, mountains, they will give you a multiplier, like plus 20% to food generation or 10% to influence. And so when you build a building on that, as you expand your territory, your main city, that building in turn will produce, I don't know, 2 food, something like that. And it's been a while, I'd have to go through the math, but it essentially folds all those bonuses in together, and you can get some really interesting combos, and you kind of have to as well, because you're not necessarily going to make a humongous base. Like, you make it big, but it's not like Civ covering every single tile on the world map. So there's a lot of different ways to play outside of the specific of your actual team. You know, quickly early on, you'll figure out some of the rules are like, you'll have essentially a barracks for building units, and you can push up the research tree. You could probably mass produce and skill up your basic units, but it becomes a research arms race, because I think, now don't hold me to it, but the price parity is pretty similar as you move up research. So say you do research a high tier infantry dude that's produced at the barracks, he may actually be the same price as the original OG crap guy. So it's one of those things that you have to think about what you're going to do, because the guy with the most research will have a definite advantage. And then, you know, there's different interplay and different types. You can produce vehicles or war machines or big monsters or heroes. It has a little bit of Warcraft 3 in there. Like, you can get these heroes that level up and have skill shot abilities too. So, you know, is the enemy building a lot of armor? Do you need to build a lot of tank busters as your orc boys, that sort of thing? You got to think about that. Anyway, it's really good. It's got a very low barrier to entry. It's very gentle on a beginner, but there is actually a humongous skill cap in the background and a lot of play diversity once you get your head around how it works. And yeah, just quickly, because I don't want this video to go on long, it's only supposed to be a quick shout out, let you know that the game is free to keep and you should go and get it. But I had a look at orcs this morning because I'm a big Xeno boy. That all my tournament teams have always been Xenos, and they're way more infantry war based. You know, you just want to build up a huge blob of infantry dudes, and as they die, they drop fungus on the ground that heals other guys that walk over them. So, you know, a little bit glass, but also mob horde mentality. Then I jumped into Space Marines, which is your cornerstone team. They're pretty much going to be your first one, and they just drop down this airdropped base, and it's your only base. However, as you pick up these resource tiles further through the map, they're sort of like control points in a way. I said that the ground doesn't normally give you resources, but there are exceptions in these control points. And Space Marines can actually drop down these like outpost fortresses to defend them, these mini little towers. And then their units are like really super strong, so it's very forgiving. You're not going to get bushwhacked so badly in the beginning by the grey units, because your dudes can take a lot of punch, but of course they're very expensive and rare. And then I jumped onto, well, I guess they call them Astra Militarum these days, but the Imperial Guard. Again, ultra glass, low morale, safety in numbers, but they have all sorts of weird rules like tactics that you can apply to your city to up specific production in certain areas, things like that. So it was cool. Even in my tiny time dipping back in, I got a chance to have a look at all the different diversity of different teams and their builds, etc. Anyway, I don't need to waffle beyond that. It's a really cool game. Check it out. It's free. You'd be mad not to. And while you're at it, have a look at the rest of the Warhammer catalogue. I'm pretty sure Mechanicus is free to play for a couple of days, not free to keep. So maybe I'll roll out a few other videos. We'll see. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.